Just excited to be talking about some spreads and some actual live sports that'll hopefully be coming our way in a few months.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, we have Korean baseball right now and League of Legends and UFC just started. But yeah, as hopefully in September we get some football, maybe not with fans, but as long as we can watch it on TV, I'm going to be excited about it. So I'm sure all of you will as well. So before we get into the spreads, so first of all, I should say that you should please subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're watching YouTube, that would mean a lot. Second, if you're already subscribed or if you're not watching YouTube, send this link out to someone. If they like football and you think they'd enjoy it, that would mean a lot to us. All right, let's get to the spreads. Well, first of all, as a broad introduction to this, what do you think about the spreads? Like, were there a lot of games you liked, or do you think there were the spreads are like kind of tough?
I think they're mostly tough at this point in the season just because we don't know how things are going to shake out. There are a lot of variables, especially with we don't know when training camp's going to start or any of that stuff. That may impact rookies. So I'm not wild on a lot of these games. I think there are some lines we can definitely take advantage of. But there are some other ones that I've kind of looked at and was like, I can see why I would lean in this direction right now. But, if it changes in the lead up to it, or if there's like a big change regarding like if a rookie's ready to play or an injured guy coming back, specifically Matthew Stafford, I think would be a good example of that. It's a little bit kind of tricky to figure out those ones. But there are a lot that I really like certain leans on it right now. I'd probably say like of the 16, there are 10 that I have a what I feel like is a pretty good read on it. So at this point in the offseason, that's I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah, when I first looked at the schedule before seeing the spreads, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to like these teams. It just feels like they're in good situations. And plus, like, as I'll discuss later, like why. But then when I saw the spreads, I'm like, oh, man, these are so good. It feels like the people who made these spreads were locked inside and they didn't have anything better to do. So they really concentrated and they got the numbers accurately. So some of it's frustrating, but I'm sure, like you said, there will be changes, there will be injuries. There are going to be adjustments to make. And sometimes the sports books are slow to adjust the number because they don't think the public will figure things out. Before we get started, your dad says, Walt got a haircut. Yeah, a secret underground haircut. Actually, my mom was a hairdresser, so I was able to go to her house. And there was some interesting stuff that happened there, which I'll discuss on Jerks of the Week eventually. But let's get to the spreads. The first game, the opening night game on September 10th will be Texans at Chiefs. The spread is Chiefs by 10.5. So what are your thoughts on this one?
So this one already made me upset. Like I was like, there's no way I'm going to be upset by the first spread. And yeah, this is one of the ones that I'm kind of bad about. And I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. But as good as the Chiefs are, I don't know if they should be favored by 10.5 points against the Texans. I know they beat the Texans big time last year in the playoffs, and they've played pretty well against them. But Deshaun Watson just keeps his team in games. Seeing him lose by 2 scores, even to a team as good as the Chiefs, it's just hard for me to imagine because the Texans are also going to be fully healthy on offense. So, like, we won't have many question marks about Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, or Will Fuller. They should all be available. So I kind of think this game might turn into a shootout for both teams. Patrick Mahomes will be able to take advantage of the Texans defense, but the Texans are going to be able to take advantage of the Chiefs' biggest weakness, which is at corner. And they really didn't do a lot to upgrade that. They lost Kendall Fuller, and I think they re-signed Bashaud Breeland, but he's dealing with a potential suspension and arrest. And, he's only a marginal number 2 guy anyway. So I'm leaning towards the Texans covering the 10.5 point spread, but I just hate picking Bill O'Brien because I don't trust that he's not going to do something really stupid before the start of the season and like bench Watson for no reason or something, or trade him for Rex Burkhead like we brought up like 7 times on this podcast. But on paper, I think this game should be like a touchdown spread in favor of the Chiefs. So we're getting some value here. But given that things could change, especially if one of the Texans playmakers on offense gets hurt, this is just a tough one. So I'm leaning Texans right now, but I'm definitely not going to bet this one until the game gets closer.
Well, one thing we do know is that if you bet the Chiefs and the Texans go up 24-0, you could still cover the spread because we saw that in the playoffs the last time these teams met, obviously. The Chiefs were down 24-0 and they won 51-31. They won by 20 points, obviously covering the spread there. It was not minus 9.5. Now this is minus 10.5. I was hoping for a lesser number here, like under 10, maybe closer to a touchdown because so here's one of the things I was considering was that this is a big advantage for Andy Reid. Like, he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. Bill O'Brien, one of the worst coaches in the NFL. If you give Andy Reid a lot of time to prepare, he just does extremely well. We all know his record after the bye. He has a great record in week 1 as well, and that makes a lot of sense. So he's going to come prepared for this game. I don't know, 4 months to get ready for this. So I think that just gives the Chiefs such a big advantage. And I think that's why I'm going to lean toward the Chiefs. Unfortunately, 10.5 is a huge number, and Deshaun Watson can get a backdoor touchdown. So that worries me a bit. But then again, Deshaun Watson doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins anymore. So that's a big difference. So right now I'm leaning toward the Chiefs, but I don't think I'm going to bet this one too much.
Yeah, the Andy Reid point is like the number one reason to go for the Chiefs. He's just so good with extra time to prepare. And now that he finally has a Super Bowl ring, it kind of feels like he's properly among like the top 5 coaches in the league, which before the only big debate was he doesn't have a ring. But, year in, year out, he gets his team to the playoffs. So I could definitely see going for the Chiefs in this matchup. I'm just hoping the number will drop a little bit. But, I mean, this is the first game of the season. I'm obviously going to bet it in some way, shape, or form, and probably more than I should because I'll be overexcited. But it's definitely a tougher spread to figure out.
Yeah, there's a question. What is Andy Reid's season opener against the spread record? I don't know what it is in Philly or what it was in Philly. I could find that out later. But I do know with the Chiefs, it's 6-1 straight up, 5-2 against the spread. So it makes a lot of sense that he would have such a great record early on. All right, let's get to the next game. Seahawks at Falcons. The Seahawks are favored by 1. What do you think about this one?
So this is one I'm leaning on the Seahawks a little bit. There are some things to like about the Falcons. They stepped up towards the end of last year, and Matt Ryan is 60-33 at home during his career. So if he's able to keep winning at that clip, he would cover this spread at home. I don't know his against the spread home numbers off the top of my head. But just for Seattle, they look better than they did last year, at least on defense. They added Quentin Dunbar. That's going to be a huge upgrade to their secondary, which is now looking really solid overall. It's not like Legion of Boom era, but they've got some underrated players back there. And I like how Shaquille Griffin pairs with him because that's kind of how the Redskins wanted Josh Norman to work with Quentin Dunbar, a bigger physical guy, but Norman regressed while Dunbar got better. So I think that's going to be a big advantage for the Seahawks. And meanwhile, the Falcons have a pretty bad back seven. I think I like their safeties, but they only have one player at linebacker right now, Deion Jones. They lost Devondre Campbell. And their cornerback group without Desmond Trufant just doesn't look very good unless AJ Terrell surprises. So I think Russell Wilson's going to have an easy time throwing against them, making plays there. And Dan Quinn coached under Pete Carroll as defensive coordinator, and I would give the advantage to Carroll in that situation, going up against a former pupil of his. So I'm going to lean with the Seahawks here. I know the Falcons, again, are good at home, and it's an early game for the Seahawks, but I don't think it'll be that much of a problem. I'm going with the better quarterback and the better overall team and most likely the better coach as well.
Yeah, I am too. If Kenny's listening to this, I'm sure he's thinking this is the Kenny special, the West Coast team playing on the East Coast at a 1 p.m. start time. But Seattle's actually been good in this role in recent years. I think ever since Mike Holmgren left, they've been they were terrible under Holmgren in this situation, but under Pete Carroll, they've been a lot better on the East Coast in these 1 p.m. start times. So I think they're going to be fine in Atlanta. I totally agree with what you said about Atlanta secondary. It's one of the worst in the NFL. Like safety, it depends on how healthy Elam is because he always seems to be injured. But their cornerbacks are terrible, and it seems like Seattle and Russell Wilson should be able to throw all over them. With DK Metcalf, I expect him to have a big year, and of course they have Tyler Lockett and a bunch of tight ends to attack that linebacking core. So it just seems like Seattle is a much better team. I feel like if this game were to take place in like week 8, Seattle will be favored by 3.5. So I think we're getting a good number with Seattle -1. All right, next game, Eagles at Redskins. The Eagles are favored by 6. So what do you think about this game?
Yeah, so this is like obviously a big number for a road game for the Eagles, but they've won 6 in a row against the Redskins, and that's why they're a road favorite of this caliber. This is a game that I'm going to have trouble betting on until we get closer to the season, because one of the big variables is how is Dwayne Haskins looking in the lead up to the season. If he is playing better and making strides under Scott Turner and Ken Zampese, who's by all accounts a very good quarterback coach at the next level, this number might be a little bit high, but I think as it is, this is a fair number, and the Eagles would be the way that I lean. They're outscoring the Redskins during their 6-game winning streak by 12.8 points, and on the road, that number balloons to 14 points per game. And the Redskins don't have a very good secondary right now. It's kind of Landon Collins and everyone else. Kendall Fuller was a good signing in free agency. Don't get me wrong there. And I like Sean Davis's upside, but they're kind of trying to figure out how things shake out back there. And I think the Eagles, with a fully healthy receiving core and fully healthy tight end position, will be able to create some mismatches, take advantage of that, and ultimately cover this spread. I'll never count out Ron Rivera because he's so great at motivating his team, but I'm leaning on the Eagles for now until we can see a little bit more of how the Redskins look under the new coaching staff.
So something to worry about with these new coaches, and Ron Rivera's obviously been around, but he's a new coach in Washington. How can they prepare these teams to play for the first time? Because they're not going to have as much practice time as usual because of the pandemic. So I think there might be a tough transition for these new coaches. So that's what I worry about with the Redskins. And something else, we don't know if they're going to be fans in the stands. I can't imagine that we're going to have a full stadium. We might have every third seat, every fourth seat or something, or maybe no fans in the stands at all. But if we do have fans in the stands, I have to believe that there are going to be more Eagles fans in the crowd than Redskins fans, because the Redskins, for whatever reason, they just don't show up to these games. And the Eagles, it's a very short road trip for them. Eagles fans always invade Washington Stadium. And so the Redskins just have a dubious home record against the spread, kind of like the Chargers do. I'm leaning toward the Eagles. I'm not very excited about this number. Like -6 seems fair. But given those two factors, I think I would like the Eagles.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with the stadium's going to be more Eagles fans. I think the coaching change will win some fans back, at least in the early stages for Washington, but they're going to want to see some on-field results before that happens, because I think often under Jay Gruden, there was like this kind of enigmatic energy around the team where it was like they either weren't quite performing up to where they should be, or they were like on the cusp of being good but couldn't quite get there. I think if things had gone differently when Alex Smith got hurt, we may be talking different about Redskins fans, but right now they just aren't super bought into this team. But I think because of all the changes that have been made this offseason, they'll feel better about it for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. Question here. What is the lowest spread for week 1? Well, I imagine it's pick 'em, but I think if you're asking highest spread, I remember back in I think it was 2003, the Dolphins were like -13.5 or something against the Texans, and they lost outright. I remember having the Dolphins in Survivor and just being super frustrated. So yeah, that's definitely happened. So the highest spread we've seen is week 1's usually less because there's uncertainty. So it's not frequent to see double digit point spreads, but we already saw one already.